And we're live.
All right, welcome back. So next up is a report from the CAO regarding our parks capital projects. Some good news, Denise, lots of activity coming this summer.
Thank you, Mayor Mills. So the purpose of this report is to provide council, in addition to acknowledging that you as members of council do receive multiple questions on a regular basis from constituents regarding projects, particularly those in parks. So I'm just giving you a very brief history, but also this is an opportunity, as I've referenced, that we've created a new website page called Town Projects. This is certainly part of fulfilling council's commitment to enhancing parks and recreation through not only the council's strategic priorities, but through the capital projects that you've approved. A number of these have certainly been in the making for more than 1 year, delays due to COVID. So the 4 projects in particular that we're going to speak to and provide updates are on the Jack Downing Park revitalization, the off-leash dog park, which is at Fiddle Park, the tennis and pickleball courts, which I mentioned at the last meeting. We've now had the ability to fund 2 at KTH, and the splash pad, which we located at Greenwood Park. So very briefly, before I turn it over to my colleagues, Melissa Kenny and Jamie Caskey are with us, and they've done an amazing job at building the new information on the website on town projects, and we'll be featuring one in particular. Also wanted to note what we've established in terms of estimated completion dates. One in particular is not an estimate. We know for sure that the dog park is near completion. We will be having the grand opening or ribbon cutting, more for humans than the dogs, on June the 11th at 9:30 a.m. And we chose that early morning time, recognizing that there's another community event taking place at the museum for cultural celebrations from a local organization, and the other estimated dates. We will be meeting in the near future with the Rotary. As I footnoted, the splash pad is a partnership with the organization. They have committed to raising $300,000 of the $700,000 approximate project costs. We understand from an email today that the equipment will be ready for installation now in early September. So obviously that will impact when it is opened. If it's possible to get a couple of weeks in yet in 2022, sorry, we will. Otherwise, it will be late spring, the 2023 opening for that new amazing feature at Greenwood. So with that, if I could ask my colleagues who have been waiting patiently, and just to note, as our town staff have committed, as you know from the report on the vaccination policy, that we continue when in close proximity to one another to always wearing masks as our commitment to respecting the health of our colleagues. That is why you'll see my 2 colleagues who are at Town Hall and sharing a space to do this great presentation are wearing masks. So I will turn it over to Melissa and Jamie to quickly, knowing the time, walk council through parts of that page.
Thank you, Denise. Through the mayor, hello and good evening. Thank you for having Jamie and I here tonight. I'm just going to share my screen so we can see the webpage. I'm hoping everyone can see it okay. We developed the new town projects webpage as a one-stop place for all town capital projects. The profile and content follow the same standardized layout on each individual page. On the main landing page here, you'll see that we have 4 featured projects. There are tennis and pickleball court, off-leash dog park, Jack Downing revitalization, and the splash pad. The featured projects also display below our other projects that we have here, which have the new water tower and the Grace Tippling Concert Hall revitalization. We have also listed on the right-hand side of the page here, public notices that have been sent out to residents or through the media. That is the main landing page. And as we move forward with each project, updated information will be added to the individual project webpage. Thank you very much. Now I would like to turn this over to one of my colleagues, Jamie Caskey, to review one of the featured projects.
Thank you, Melissa. And through the mayor, good evening, everyone. I'm happy to have the opportunity to present the Off-Leash Dog Park project webpage, as this is the first town project listed here to be completed. The town is excited to be able to provide a designated and safe location for dogs to socialize, exercise, and play off leash. Located in the northeast corner of Fiddle Park, the off-leash dog park will provide approximately 1 acre of natural landscape for dogs and their owners to enjoy. So once you click on the specific project, this will bring you to its dedicated project page. As you go through the web page, standard headings have been used to outline the designated project information. So first we have is history. For history, there'll be a brief background on the project. For goals and outcome, we have outlined here for the dog park page, the features and amenities that will be included within the dog park, a small dog area and large dog area, picnic tables, garbage receptacles, dog waste stations, and dog waste bags, as well as 16 hard surface parking spaces. Another key element under the goals and outcomes section is how this project meets council's strategic priorities, sustainable goals, and which targets. For reports, we have relating documents attached here for public view. As you can see, we have the CAO project report and various planning reports. Under what to expect, for timelines, a brief overview of key dates is provided here. Scrolling down to our FAQ section, question toggles have been created and can be clicked to provide the public with quick answers. So an example here is, were any trees removed for this project? For someone inquiring, that can be clearly answered underneath once clicking. So no trees were removed, and additional information is outlined here for reference as well. Where applicable, we will add more information such as mapping and public engagement opportunities. So for here on our dog park page, we have our general map. This provides and illustrates for the public where the dog park will be located, within Fiddle Park, parking area, access to trails and other park facilities. Underneath, we have added in the rules and regulations of our dog park. This has been developed through review of other municipalities' best practices and requirements, and in consultation with town staff and town bylaw. Moving towards the end of the page, we do have photos. So these 2 images are the most recent photos of the dog park. As noted in today's staff report and by Denise, the dog park is set to open June 11th of this year. So coming up soon. Opening is scheduled for 9:30 on the Saturday. We expect invitations to be sent to council by Wednesday to attend the official ribbon cutting of the off-leash park. So that's just a brief view of our dog park page. I'd like to take the time to thank you for having the opportunity to formally present this page as well as the project page outline.
Thank you both. It looks great. So what I would suggest, can somebody maybe email out the specific page link to each of us, and then we can share it on our social media platforms?
Certainly. Yep. Sorry, Mary Mills. Yes, well, staff will do that in the morning. We'll send to all of council the links so that you can share it. Some of the pages, though, for the projects are not yet updated. We'll update that as we have information, as Jamie mentioned. So certainly, again, when you click on the other links, it says more information. They're not actually active. This one is in particular. So we'll keep building that. And our intent, so I'm just going to segue a bit. So some of the information that we've also been sharing within parks operations with respect to, say, sidewalk clearing and street cleaning, we're looking at doing the same type of approach so that all of the information with respect to some of those schedules as well as annual initiatives will be there. So if somebody wants to ask, when do the washrooms open? There'll be a standardization. When is street sweeping taking place? There's going to be a window of weeks and it'll be into zones, but it won't be that you can ask what specific street is going to happen on Tuesday. You'll know that this zone of the town will be getting cleaning during those weeks. And to address the questions tonight, once that street sweeping contract has expired, the resident will need to be aware that there's no longer an opportunity to push whatever it may be, whether it's leaves or any other debris, to the streets boulevard, so that the town will be addressing it. It'll be then your responsibility to do that. So our hope is to continue to expand the information, accountability, and transparency. Again, respecting and understanding the number of questions that you get, so that we can facilitate residential information in probably a more proactive way. And then you as counselors can direct the members of the community that ask you that to the website. And certainly then if there's gaps, we're certainly able to then follow up with that. So I know you probably recognize a significant amount of work went into creating these new pages. Being intuitive in terms of the information we're sharing, we hope is there, but certainly if we've missed stuff, we'll add it. And I just want to again thank my colleagues for all the work they did. A lot of the insight that they put into it was based on the dealing with the residential community and our projects on a regular basis. So they did a great job.
Agreed. Yes. Thank you both. I mean, looking just through the dog park one there that you kind of walked us through, Jamie. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think it hits, all of the high points, and anything that most residents would ask for, I think is there. And that the pictures are a nice touch. So yeah, I mean, I think it just gives the whole community kind of an easy one-stop shop, as you said, Melissa, where they can go get all of the information that they need, in a easily digestible form. So that's great. That's great. All right. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just very quickly. First of all, great work, ladies, and not only on this, but the recreational portfolio altogether and some of the other issues that you guys are working on. So fantastic work, Jamie and Melissa, on those items, even though the public may not be aware of them, but I know that you guys are doing a fantastic job. So thank you for that. With respect to the dog park, I didn't see it there on the landing page. I may have missed it. Is there something that clearly states what kind of dogs are allowed or what dogs are prohibited? Some people may have some concerns about bringing their dogs there when they're not sure what dogs are allowable in that space. And so I'm just wondering if there's something that speaks to that.
So I can address the dog park structure is divided into big dogs and little dogs as one protective element. The rules don't speak to any kind of breed exemption, but it does say that if your dog has behavioral issues, certain guidance is provided. Obviously, unfortunately, and we hope we never have to go there, DOLA, Dangerous Occupiers Liability Act for dogs, is part of the protocols. We have protocols with respect to how many dogs you may bring in under your care and control, which is critical to safety of other dogs. Vaccinated dogs is required. So again, within the page when we send you the link, if there's anything that you think we've missed in terms of those guidelines, we're happy to share it. But we think, as Jamie said, a best practice review was undertaken, bylaw was consulted and involved in the finalization. We think we've covered off as much as we can to ensure that we provide a safe environment for dogs, but we really ask people to respect the big and little dog separation, and it's done for a reason.
Yeah, no, I certainly appreciated the separation between the two, but sometimes it's the breed that's the issue for folks. And I was just wondering whether or not other jurisdictions or municipalities that have these kinds of parks have something that speaks to the breed itself. But listen, I'll leave it to you guys. You guys have done your checks, but that was just a question that I had. Is there an opportunity in this space, because it seems rather large too, as the mayor talked about one-stop shopping? Is there an opportunity, let's say, for a local vendor, for example, to sell like dog items within that space, for example? So if your dog needs a bone or it needs a leash or it needs something, there's an opportunity, throw them a bone, right? There's an opportunity to have somebody there to provide that maybe to the owners that are there with their pets.
So we haven't incorporated any kind of permanent feature like that. What we would look at is potentially through special events that may or may not be organized in the future. I mean, we will explore a Friends Of model for dog ownership like you see in other, but this is initiation. The other thing is what we'd like to do is certainly to your point, dogs need a lot of care and support. We have a number of businesses that are, that is their primary industry, that we would like to then have those businesses see the support of the owners by going back to the business and helping profile who they are. But that would be a next phase. But again, no vendors or direct sales would be anticipated except during a special event function.
And just my last comment, just on that point, Denise, when you talk about making sure that those who have these established businesses in town are able to benefit from the services that these dogs may need, is there an opportunity to have something that's there, whether it's on a board or something that actually allows people to know that there are these businesses that are in town that provide services for them?
Certainly, and we'll be looking at the next phase of the development of the park. So it could be something in terms of an ambassadorship or a partner board. I mean, some places do have almost the equivalent of arena board advertising within the interior fence or exterior, but we want to explore what makes aesthetic, I guess, sense, what makes revenue and functional sense in terms of creating an ad that's a cost that's actually less than the revenues that you receive, and managing all that through the second phase. This was simply to make sure we got it up and running. The report did have other elements of the dog park that we have not been able to incorporate within this existing timeframe, but we certainly haven't expended the entire budget either. But we'll build on that, and we think that the community of dog, I don't want to call them users, dog families, will be very instrumental in bringing back that engagement loop to see what we do next together. So we're excited about June 11th, but it certainly is a start and only a start.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Buffett. You're muted, Linda.
I know in the past, when we were discussing the dog park, we talked about the vaccination status, and I don't know whether we came up with an actual solution as to how we would monitor that. Is that there something in place when this opens for that to happen?
So through the mayor, similar to other communities, we did review how that enforcement is done. And right now it's a requirement that you actually self-adhere. If we have spot inspections and we ask for evidence of that, that would be something that you would have to provide. In the absence of meeting those requirements, then whatever necessary actions would be taken. Usually it's a warning first, similar to other enforcement. And then otherwise you would be not able to use the facility going forward for non-compliance. But it right now, again, similar to others, is most of the time is required that you as the user, similar to other parks, are committing to adhering to the rules and the guidance that's posted in terms of your utilization.
Yeah, and I think honestly, short of having somebody hired to stand post there all the time, I mean, what else are you going to do? So yeah. Okay, anybody else? Before we move on, I would be remiss if I didn't give due credit to Councillor Wagner too. I mean, you were sort of the champion of this from the get-go, so it's nice to see that this is going to be the first project sort of out of the gate this summer. So I'm looking forward to the 11th, and then again later on for Jack Downing Park and the tennis and pickleball courts, and later on in the year the splash pad. So it's going to be a big year for the Parks and Rec sphere in the town of Shelburne, and it's long overdue, as all of us know. But we've made it, so it's good. It's good. All right. If there's nothing else, then can I have a motion to receive the reports? Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Wagner. All in favor? It's carried. All right. Thanks again, guys. Okay, next is a bylaw from our treasurer for striking the rates of taxation and to set out the penalties and interest for default. Carrie, do you want to discuss
Yeah.
that at all? It's kind of a standard annual bylaw, isn't it?
Yes, thank you. And through the mayor, this is the standard final tax rate bylaw that is all encompassing as far as including the amounts that were set to be raised in accordance with the adopted budget. So this tax rate increase represents 5%, just as a reminder. And the due dates are set out in the bylaw, and basically that's it.
Okay.
I didn't write a report to accompany the
No,
bylaw.
that's fine. Can I have a motion for the reading and enacting of that bylaw? Moved by Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Donato. All in favor? It's carried. All right, next is report from our clerk regarding return to in-person meetings. Jennifer, over to
Thank
you.
you. And through your worship, back in March, a request was made to bring forward an update regarding in-person versus virtual council meetings. Included in the draft 2022 budget, $8,500 was provided, and that was to provide for in-person council and committee meetings with a hybrid approach. This budget also included the offsite rental costs of the Town and Country Room at the CDRC. During budget discussions back in December, the $8,500 was removed based on the understanding that meetings would continue to be held virtually for the remaining term of council. And the 2022 budget revisions are attached to my report as Appendix 1. Prior to the pandemic, council meetings were being held in person in the current council chambers. The size of the current council chambers is approximately 400 square feet. It's considered very small, non-functional, and cannot accommodate public seating. So overall, it's been determined that the current council chambers is not sufficient and that an alternative location is required. While performing research and trying to figure out where that permanent location is, we did look at relocation of the council chambers to the main floor of the town hall, which was previously used by the Shelburne Police Service. That space is about 700 square feet, and usable space is further limited due to the supporting walls and pillars that cannot be removed. It would require significant capital costs to expand the space. Understanding that the new generator and electric vehicle charging stations have been installed at the south end of the town hall. So relocating that would be very extensive in order to accommodate an addition to the town hall. Staff, as noted previously, have been following COVID protocols. We've been following space separation and masking requirements. And so we had also repurposed the former police space for office space for administration staff. Another option we have researched is relocating temporarily to the Grace Tippling Hall. As we move forward with revitalization of the Grace Tippling Hall, the expectation that rentals, performances, and other uses will increase. So scheduling permanent in-person council meetings would likely interfere with future theater uses. As in most circumstances, the theater groups typically book this Grace Tippling Hall between 4 to 6 weeks with blackout dates. And so that's for setup of their stage apparatuses, clothing requirements, change rooms, that sort of thing. While this report has recommended that council meetings continue for the remainder of this term using an electronic format, Grace Tippling Hall could be used as a temporary space for in-person meetings in late 2022 and early 2023. Unfortunately, the option to hold hybrid meetings in Grace Tippling Hall is limited due to current technical limitations. The town of Shelburne, like many other municipalities, we face some unique challenges to adapting to in-person meetings while trying to include a hybrid meeting approach. A hybrid model will allow some members of council and staff to connect to meetings from home as opposed to attending in person. It's also beneficial to create a shared space that could accommodate both council and committee meetings. Considerations for a permanent space and locations would include audiovisual, such as portable screens, modular furniture, monitors, speakers, microphones, cameras, and lighting. A hybrid approach is generally very costly and requires a permanent location. One thing to note as well is public engagement. While we have been live streaming our meetings via YouTube, live streaming of council meetings has increased public engagement significantly and has proven to be a valuable tool. Live streaming has also provided increased access and expanded public engagement and is barrier-free. It has allowed residents and members of the public the opportunity to safely watch proceedings of council in their homes at their leisure on their own time. So currently, when reviewing the council vaccination policy, as noted previously, staff has committed to voluntarily continue wearing masks and following social distancing guidelines. If there was a return to in-person council and committee meetings, it would be recommended that the same protocols be followed. The vaccination policy for staff remains in place and will be reviewed in July. The vaccination policy for council boards and committee appointments also remains in effect at this time, and this may limit the ability of some to attend in-person meetings at any town facility should they not be vaccinated. And so looping back to the recommendation in my report, that the council receives the report, that council and committee meetings continue using a virtual format for the remaining term of council, and that the estimated cost for in-person council meetings to be held at CDRC be included in the draft 2023 budget, and that council provides staff direction regarding the continuation, suspension, or rescinding of the vaccination policy for council, board, and committee appointments. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, questions or comments? Councilor Bernardo.
I guess I want to comment. Number one.
I am not surprised.
No, you shouldn't be. No one should be. Okay. I know we took out for money out of the budget, but we also have a council budget for conferences, and I don't believe there's anybody that is utilizing any of that conference money at this time. I know that the mayor and the deputy mayor are going to AMO, but they're using county money, not town money. So we do have some monies. Election is coming up as well. And if I remember right, we usually have a debate time at election. I'd like to know how we're going to do that. Is that going to be done virtually as well?
Well, typically we don't, well, I shouldn't say typically. In fact, we never organize or host the event. That's done by another organization. I think the Legion has done it the last few years. So it's not really a municipal exercise to do the all candidate sessions, but Board of Trade, I think, has done it in the past as well.
Yeah, and usually the candidates, if I remember the one done currently for the current election that's happening right now, they were done in person, they were done somewhere. And I imagine that whoever does it will do the same in the town. So it's just, to my mind, yes, people are participating, but every meeting I've come to, the mayor says, is there any questions from the public? And the answer is no, there's no questions from the public. Yes, they are maybe watching us, but they are not participating with us, because there is no questions coming in, similar to what may have happened when they were actually within council chambers. Now, I understand, and I agree, our council chambers is a closet, not really a council chambers. But if we can somehow utilize the Rose Tippling Hall, and if there is public that wants to come in and be a participant in a meeting, at least they're there in person to ask those questions. It seems like we're not getting any real public participation in the sense of people asking us or questioning us. Yeah, I get those questions when I'm walking on the streets. That's the only time I get the questions, not when I'm at a council meeting. I don't seem to hear the questions at council meeting. And I'm kind of wondering, is it because they don't feel they can participate in our council meetings? So it's easier to ask somebody, when they're in the grocery store or walking the streets, seems than it is to come to a council meeting and actually ask the council and question the council in person. So if there's some form or means, there's some money somewhere we can utilize to create some form of a hybrid model that we can, participate at in person or whatever, I think that's something we should explore. I just feel that somehow continuing on through till the next council for a proper council coming together seems to me strange. That's all. That's the end. I'm not going to comment anymore on it. At this point, I'm just going to say I'm frustrated, and I think this is not the method that we should be using.
I don't disagree in terms of the volume of questions we get for public question period. My thought is, and maybe I'll play devil's advocate a little bit. My thought is, at least from my experience, and I suspect it might be the same for the other 6 members of council, is that I tend to be getting more questions, as you say, Councillor Bernardo, on the street, in the grocery store, by email, via social media. And one of the changes that we made to our procedural bylaw this term was to allow for the council inquiry section at our meetings. And for the newer members of council, that wasn't something that has been done in the past. And I think for the most part, it's been sort of a productive addition. And most meetings we do have a fairly, brisk, lively discussion about, a lot of issues that have been raised to us and through us by residents of the community. So yeah, I don't disagree. We may not be getting as many direct questions, but I do think that, people have found other ways, just as COVID has taught us all to kind of be resilient, have found other ways to get the information and the questions to us and get the information back. In terms of what's going on in the rest of the county, I mean, I can provide a little bit of insight. This certainly isn't a situation where I think, we have to feel as though we're being an outlier by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, if all of the other lower tier municipalities in the county were back to meeting in person, we were the only holdouts, I think I might feel differently about this. But as far as I know, only the township of Mulmer and the town of Mono, I think at this point, are considering in-person or hybrid meetings. And the distinct advantage that both of those municipalities have over us is that they have newer buildings with much larger council chambers. So, I mean, they can accommodate the spacing requirements that are necessary to fit their council in. I mean, I'm literally sitting in our council chamber right now and just looking around the room realistically. In order to maintain the kind of spatial requirements that are being recommended, we'd be hard pressed to fit any more than 4 or 5 people in here. So, I mean, that doesn't even cover our council, let alone staff or community members. And then Jennifer's highlighted the other difficulties that are associated with Grace Tippling Hall, just in terms of cross bookings, and then the costs that come with other offsite options. And from a policy point of view, I guess all of us made a decision at budget time when we were presented with that option, that was one thing that we could take off the table to try to reduce that tax rate. So I mean, in some ways we kind of had the policy debate during budget. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I mean, I agree, Councillor Bernardo, this isn't an ideal situation, but I mean, until we can come up with a proper solution going forward, this does allow us to continue. And to Jennifer's point, I mean, in some respects, I do think it actually makes our proceedings more accessible. So, any other thoughts? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. I tend to agree with you. Obviously, you can gauge engagement by a variety of different metrics. And the fact is, when we were in person and not live streaming, the amount of people that were participating were extremely low. And since we've gone to this method, I think the engagement level with the community is up. Obviously, walking through the town, whether you're going through the grocery store, uptown, what have you, those questions that they're coming to you at, or at least coming to me with, are much more informed or asking more questions than I've seen in the early portion of the term. So I really think that there's something to be said with the way things are currently undertaking. I know future-wise, we need to look at how we mend or mesh the live streaming options. And again, I think the clerk included that very clearly in the overall report tonight as to what those costs potentially can be, and needing to find that permanent home for that investment to be made. So, I understand the frustration. I feel it too. But under the circumstances, like you mentioned, we made this decision of budget timing, and I think we need to follow through.
Any other thoughts? In terms of the recommended motion in the agenda, Jennifer, one thing I think I maybe would like, and I'm fine to, I'll go ahead, I'll make this motion, but I would like to just amend the one section slightly that refers to adding estimated costs for CDRC in next year's budget. I'm not sure I want to lock us into the CDRC at this point necessarily. I think I'd maybe like slightly broader language there to just kind of, ask staff to consider other options, including CDRC. But at this stage of the game, I don't think we necessarily have to commit ourselves only to that one possible option. I would like to look at some other ones before we make any final decisions. And then my thought in terms of the vaccination policy for council boards and committees, again, I mean, if we're going to stay with an electronic or virtual meeting approach, it really is a bit of a moot point. So my thought would be that we just sort of do a review of that to coincide with the review of the staff policy in July. And then we can sort of look at both of them at the same time. So I'll go ahead and kind of read the motion here as I'll amend it slightly. Be it resolved, the council receives report LS 2022-08 from the Director of Legislative Services clerk for information, and the council and committee meetings continue using a virtual format for the remainder of this term of council. And that staff continue to consider alternative locations for council meetings to be held and to include any associated budget implications in the draft 2023 budget. And the council will review the vaccination policy for council, board, and committee appointments in July at the same time that the staff policy is considered. Can I get a seconder for that motion? Councillor Fegan, thank you. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right, next report is from the clerk again, and this is about our proposed revised land acknowledgement statement.
Thank you. And through your worship, I'll just give a very quick high level. This is a very simple report that at the May 9th council meeting, council requested the land acknowledgement be amended. Staff have worked closely with the Dufferin County Cultural Resource Circle to amend the land acknowledgement to try and capture the request of council. So included in the report is the amended acknowledgement. This will become a land acknowledgement statement to be read during council and committee meetings. The land acknowledgement will also be read at all town sanctioned events. The new information will also be added to our website. Staff are recommending that the land acknowledgement be forwarded to local boards, police, fire, and CDRC for their consideration. And we'll also add this to our committee of adjustment meetings as well. And so reviewing the recommendation, that council receives the report, adopts the revised land acknowledgement, and requests that the revised land acknowledgement be forwarded to local boards for their consideration. Happy to take any questions if you have any.
I know it's in the report, Jennifer, but just for the benefit of those watching and maybe haven't read the report, could you just touch on the consultation process that was undertaken to kind of develop this revision?
Yes, so the consultation was with Debbie Sikima through the Dufferin County Cultural Resource Circle. We took the two of us together. We had drafted what's before you this evening. I can read it if you'd like. Did you want me to read it out loud to you?
I don't think that's necessary. I mean, it's in there if somebody wants to read it, and presumably they'll hear it starting at the next council meeting, but.
Council had requested to include educational links. And so trying to find each individual link, it was easier to just link it back to the Resource Circle's website. All of that educational information is on their website. Debbie had recommended one amendment within that we add, upon which we live, work, play, and learn. That's what she had requested be included in there. And other than that, it was fairly straightforward and simple to review with her. And this is the finalized acknowledgement brought forward to council.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly more substantial from my perspective. I like it. I particularly like the call to action part and the link that's provided. Assuming this is adopted by council, just sort of a stylistic point, I'm wondering if going forward, when the land acknowledgement is being read, could we do a share screen, which basically has the section that reads, "We encourage residents to review the call to action information by visiting the following website," and actually put that on the screen while it's being read?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any thoughts or comments on this, Councillor Hall?
I'd just like to, as far as the recommendation go, I noticed that the library board is not on there. So I think that's an item that can be, a friendly amendment.
Yeah, okay. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Can I have a motion then for the recommended motion moved by Councillor Hall? Seconder for that, Councillor Bernardo. All right, all in favor? It's carried. All right, thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.
You're up again to discuss your report regarding the boards and committee structure.
Thank you. Through your worship, I'll just do a quick high-level overview that this is normal practice during an election year. Our procedural bylaw does note that no regular meeting shall occur during the voting period in the year of an election. And so accordingly, committee, board, and council meetings will be suspended from October 11th to October 24th. Last council meeting scheduled for Monday, October 3rd. There is an opportunity to call a special council meeting either for Monday, October 31st or Monday, November 7th. The regular meeting that was scheduled for November 14th will not take place, as that is when the current term of council ends. And just a quick reminder, council had passed a delegation bylaw delegating authority to the CAO should we enter a lame duck period as of August 19th. Appointments for Shelburne Committee and boards are for the current term of council, which also ends November 14th. Staff will be commencing the committee and board application process on November 1st. All committee and board members will be required to reapply for their positions. It is hoped that all committee and boards will be able to resume their regular meeting schedules by January 2023. And staff will be sending out application information to all committee and board members when the process has commenced. Attached as Appendix 2 to my report is the meeting dates noted for the remainder of the year up to the voting period as noted, October 11th to 24th. That's the voting period. So also noted in the report, staff are recommending a revised approach to the Accessibility Committee. The Accessibility Committee has undertaken tremendous work in the past many years, but has struggled during this term of council with securing committee volunteers, and in many cases has not been able to have meetings due to lack of quorum. Over the past many years, the Accessibility Advisory Committee has led many initiatives in support to local businesses and residents and has been a valuable asset to the town. Included in my report is a brief outline of the projects they've undertaken over the past few years. And so accessibility is often directly linked with diversity, equity, and inclusion commitments and initiatives. The option to have the Accessibility Committee incorporated within the DEI Committee was also discussed at a recent DEI meeting. As a pilot project for the next term of council, being 2022 to 2026, staff are recommending that the AAC Committee be dissolved and incorporated under the portfolio of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, including the creation of a subcommittee for accessibility. One option is to also revise the name of the DEI Committee to Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility. This has been recommended within my report. It is recognized that additional staffing resources and training and education for committee volunteers will likely be required to support the expanded DEI accessibility mandate. And so looping back to my recommendation is that the report be received for information. The Accessibility Advisory Committee be dissolved as of October 2022, be incorporated under the portfolio of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the next term of council, and that the DEI Committee be renamed to the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Committee. That concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Jennifer? Councilor Donato?
My suggestion is that we dissolve the accessibility committee is up right now and incorporate it into the DEI. As the clerk has mentioned, up until now, this year in particular, we have never been able to have a meeting, which to my mind doesn't allow for the work of accessibility to go ahead. It should continue on, and there is enough interest, I think, with at least one person within the DEI to make sure that some accessibility moves on ahead. So I wouldn't wait for the next term of council. I would suggest that it be incorporated as of right now into that committee so that accessibility moves on. From in my mind, I mean, it's been a struggle, and I know having started this process 22 years ago, I want to see it continue on, whether I'm there or not. And I want to make sure that people with accessibility at least have a voice somewhere, making sure that what their needs are met within the town. So that is my suggestion, and I hope council will take it and move with it.
Are there any procedural issues with moving ahead now, Denise?
Yes, thank you to the mayor, and certainly respect Councilor Bonato's input, and that there is a sub-working group within the existing DEI team looking at a range of issues right now as a part of diversity, equity, and inclusion. With respect to the recommendation from the clerk, in order to have a formality and formally include accessibility as part of the broader mandate, we really would appreciate the time of staff to come up with an updated terms of reference for the next term of council, to ensure that those people that are considering as volunteers to be appointed are fully aware of the new scope, because it would change quite drastically. That doesn't preclude the fact that the existing accessibility committee is not meeting, but the dissolution rate we're recommending stay as we've recommended, and that the current DEI could continue working towards some of the initiatives that they've identified to date, because again, their term is very short. And to formalize that now, we're not really sure if that's strategic this late in this term. So certainly we'll take the direction of council, but I just wanted to provide the input on why we wanted some time to look at the implementation of this if you had approved it this evening.
Okay, I mean, I get that. On one hand, I mean, the dissolution of the existing accessibility committee probably isn't so much the issue. It's the changing mandate of the DEI committee that may take some time. But that said, Denise, I think what I understand you're saying is, you know, that there's nothing that would preclude the existing DEI committee under its current mandate to sort of pick up the charge on some of these issues for the remainder of the term. And I mean, to that end, if that's a possibility,
Yes.
What I
Certainly.
would suggest, perhaps is for Councillor Donato to maybe visit one of the upcoming DEI committee meetings on Zoom, nonetheless, to kind of share some of the ongoing projects. Or at the very least, if you don't want to do that, Councillor Donato, then communicate some of the concerns to our existing DEI committee members, and they can sort of carry the torch for the balance of this term.
I've already met with them.
Okay.
It's not, it was a meeting a bit back in time, and Karen Lang was on that meeting, and we've had discussions in the meantime. And the reason I'm suggesting what I'm suggesting is because of Karen Lang. She is one of the strongest proponents for accessibility that I've spoken to in quite a while. So I know what you're saying in the terms of reference, Denise, and honestly, we already have terms of reference for the accessibility part. They're there. All we're doing is just carrying them on, and it could be a subcommittee of the DEI. Karen Lang is very strong on that point while she was on the DEI, and she wanted to be part of the accessibility committee. So moving a few people around, the DEI can easily create a subcommittee for now of some of the accessibility people and whatnot, and all we're doing is just reporting up through to the DEI. And that was something that they were interested in when I met with them during that meeting, that they wanted to have some input as to their projects or what we were doing along to them. So it's no different right now if a subcommittee made up, say, of Karen Lang, myself, and whoever else, we can come from the accessibility, just continue on in some format, reporting through to the DEI. All I'm saying is right now, as it is, we cannot get an accessibility committee meeting together. We haven't been able to do that for a while. So at least if we can meet in the form of a subcommittee of the DEI, we can at least provide reports up through to council in some format. I just don't know how we can get anything through to council when we can't meet.
Is that something that's workable sort of as an interim measure that, rather than deconstructing the whole DEI mandate in terms of reference, just for the balance of this term, we sort of create a subcommittee and kind of absorb those members of accessibility who are still active? Councillor Fegan?
Being on the DEI committee, I know that one of the concerns with taking on more workload was the amount of people that we have and resources. And I know that was a concern. But if we were to absorb other members from the accessibility committee to help with some of that workload, I think that would certainly be something that's welcome and certainly a way that we can accommodate, I would think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, oh, sorry, Councillor Wagner.
Thank you very much. That was kind of going to be my comment that I was going to make. I sort of agree there with Councillor Fegan. My question was going to be, are we going to sort of absorb the members as well from the accessibility committee? Just, I understand it's difficult for them to get together, but even if one or two of the active members would kind of come over and give us a hand, it would be a huge help. So I wasn't sure how that was going to go. And that was my question was, are they going to sort of come over with us as well? So yeah, hopefully maybe someone has that answer and that will help us out.
How's this sound? I mean, I'm quite happy to leave the mechanics up to the members of the two respective committees. I mean, if that's the approach we want to take, I think that sounds workable, assuming that the two groups can work together. I don't think necessarily we have to change the actual recommendation in the agenda. Formally going forward, we can look at changing the committee for the next term of council. But in the interim, I don't think anything precludes the two committees from kind of talking and putting their heads together and creating a subcommittee of DEI to deal with accessibility issues. Is there any issue with that anybody sees? Okay. All right. So in that case, can I have a mover and seconder then for the motion that's contained in the agenda? Councillor Wagner, seconded by Councillor Fegan. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Next item is in relation to a letter from the organizers of Pickin' in the Park. And it's regarding essentially the use of alcohol and smoking in the public park. I know that staff has sort of been dealing with this, and I think trying to work through insurance requirements and everything else. And I see actually that their recommendation is simply to, you know, receive the letter, acknowledge what the concerns are expressed by the organizers, and refer the matter back to staff to try to continue to find a resolution. Denise, did you want to add anything more to it beyond that?
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Mills, and through you. Certainly, I think council is aware that we do have processes associated with rentals and what's permitted or not permitted within a park setting. We do have fairly strict protocols with respect to the consumption of alcohol and compliance with the Alcohol and Gaming Commission requirements where alcohol may be consumed within a park setting under licensed or non-licensed areas. We do have an outstanding and long-term practice that smoking is not permitted in our parks. And while the setbacks are currently specific to Smoke Free Ontario, the practice has been in the permitting, regardless of the bylaw, which we need to update, that smoking is not permitted in our parks. So we certainly will be conveying that back to the requesters, just to outline the options available to them. Again, not for smoking, but certainly how alcohol could be consumed within a public park based on the protocols that we need to work within. So if there's any other specific questions, if I haven't addressed it, I'll try to do so.
Thoughts, questions? Don't see any. Okay, can I have a mover and seconder then for the motion? Councillor Wagner, seconder, Councillor Fegan. All in favor? That's carried as well. Okay, the next item is a request from the DEI committee to issue a public statement regarding the mass shooting that took place in Buffalo, New York a couple of weeks ago. The draft statement that has been prepared is contained in the agenda. And I think what's required, you know, because the DEI is a committee of council, we have to authorize them to go ahead and release this statement if that's what we desire to do. Is there a mover and seconder that would like to authorize that? Moved by Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. Is there any discussion on that? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I was actually looking for the discussion. I didn't mean to second it, but I'll take it anyways.
Okay.
It's fine. My only, I mean, I'm not questioning obviously the legitimacy of doing the statement. I think it goes without saying that it's important, but I just wonder if, because, you know, we just had another one that was a week later, right? And so I just wonder if you're going to put out the statement, do we just simply send it back and amend it just to add the one in Texas? Because it would only make sense, in my opinion, if you're going to talk about the shooting, to encompass both, because it was only a week later, and then have that conveyed to the public, instead of you release this and people were like, well, what happened to the one in Texas only a week later? So that's my only comment. Certainly if the committee wants to, or council rather wants to go as is, then that's fine. But I would just put that out there for consideration. Thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I mean, I had the same sort of thought. I think the original intention and maybe why the Buffalo shooting was raised through DEI, you know, it was because, you know, that was seemingly racially motivated. You know, whether the same can be said about the school shooting, you know, I guess, you know, it depends on perspective, but I mean, I'm quite happy to sort of direct that we just include some language in this statement and release kind of a more wholesome statement that, you know, kind of condemns both and you know, speaks to both situations. I mean, unfortunately, you know, these things happen with greater frequency than any of us would like. to see. So, you know, I guess it becomes a difficult task to determine, you know, when we're going to release statements, when we're not, you know, which sort of tragedy warrants a public statement, which doesn't, you know, and I don't think there is a right or wrong answer to that. But in terms of these two in particular, I'm quite comfortable in putting something out about both of them. Denise, I think you sort of played a large hand in crafting this draft statement. I could be wrong, but I'm assuming that's the case.
Through your worship, Jennifer was very involved in the initial draft. Through the DEI, it was assigned that the vice chair would be the person approving it. We then provided her with two other options. And the one that is before you was the one that was selected. And we also had a request, as we do with others, to make a statement regarding Texas, which we said we would certainly bring forward. But as staff, we identified to the points that you've just made, that the tragedies due to gun violence, particularly in the United States, are ongoing. That there's been shootings after Buffalo and even after Texas. That we will develop a guideline for council to consider on when statements will be issued, whether they're recommended by the DEI and the DEI accessibility, or any committee or anybody coming forward as a resident suggesting this, just to help provide context. Or you may be making statements weekly, or in some tragic events bi-weekly. So so staff tried to facilitate the statement, given the timing of the last DEI meeting on May 21st, when this was suggested, to coincide with your meeting tonight. So certainly we know that there's been other tragedies that have taken place in that short period of time since that horror and murder.
Councilor Bernardo?
But this is a committee recommending council make this statement, or is council approving the committee make this statement?
The latter, yeah. So it'll be signed on behalf of the committee.
So should we be changing the motion, or should we be sending it back to the committees approving what they've written so far and allowing them to come back with another statement at a future date? I don't feel comfortable changing a committee's recommendation and putting words in their mouth that they may or may not approve of us doing. I'd rather approve what they've sent to us and then allow them to modify or change if they want to change it. So I'm kind of wondering if we just leave it the way it is right now and allow them to, if they want to change it, but we have approved what they've sent to us as far as they've sent to us. I'm feeling that if it's a council statement, then we can do whatever we want if we're the ones proclaiming it. But if somebody else is proclaiming it, I don't feel comfortable changing somebody else's wording and putting words in it.
Process-wise, I'll just clarify. The committees under our protocol do not have the authority to make statements. They are a committee of council that makes recommendations to council. So they are recommending to you, as they have done in the past, that a statement be issued by the town of Shelburne, which is the authority of council. If committees had the authority to make statements in the absence of council approval, they would be issuing them. And we have a cautionary approach, and that's not our structure. So what they're recommending to council can be amended by council or not. It's within your jurisdiction to make those decisions. They are making recommendations to you.
So then it's going back to what I said, it's our statement, not their statement.
It's the committee recommending to the town of Shelburne Council that the town issue a statement.
But it's our statement.
It's your statement to be issued.
It's our statement to make.
But the statement is signed by the DEI committee.
It's their recommendation to council to issue, yes. But again, like all recommendations to council, it's within the purview of council to accept the recommendation, modify the recommendation, or not support the recommendation. Okay. Similar to a staff report.
Okay. So if it's up to us, I'm going to go to the fact that I think that going back to what you said, this shooting in Buffalo was more racially motivated than the one necessarily in Texas. The one in Texas was unfortunate, like all guns shootings that happen at schools. It's happened in other schools, Colorado, Massachusetts, I believe. It's happened all over the states. It's just an unfortunate situation. It's happened in Texas more than once. It's happened at the University of Texas in the past. So, but the one that happened in Buffalo was totally racially motivated. It happened in a poor section of Buffalo where the Black community lives and shops. That particular shop is catering only to that particular community. It does not cater to a broad community. It caters to a very specific community, and that's where that shooting happened. So it's totally racially motivated. So I feel very comfortable in issuing this statement, not necessarily broadening it out, because it is a statement against a very particular, brutal, racially motivated act.
Okay. Well, why don't we, I'll throw out a suggestion. I mean, if we leave this statement as is, would you and the deputy mayor as the seconder consider a friendly amendment to just add a provision of that to ask staff to provide a different statement on behalf of council in relation to the Texas school shooting?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't mind doing that. I just wanted to be clear. There's no question that it was racially motivated, and by adding the shooting in Texas with little children wasn't intended to dilute the significance of what happened in Buffalo. I was just saying that it could be made in addition. So you still have the language, but there's maybe a sentence or so saying that council also condemns what happened in Texas with the children and the teachers that lost their lives. So it doesn't, in my view, necessarily dilute the significance and the impact and the wording that currently exists. It's just adding a sentence or so rather than coming back with an entirely new statement again. When what you're really addressing is gun violence. Yes, one racially motivated, and another one is out to the jury. But that was the commentary. But again, if council, I'm not saying delay this. I think it should go out. But I was just thinking about adding that a sentence or so to it. But if not, then that's fine with me as well.
You two made the motion, so you two duke it out. Tell us how you want to proceed.
Duke it out.
As far as I'm concerned, all gun violence, this statement can go out, and we could basically have, if council or whatever, somebody can come up with all gun violence against school children, against anyone, is totally nonsense. It's something that shouldn't be happening in this world. So I have no issue with statement against Texas and all gun violence, period.
Okay. So what I would say, Mayor, that I'll just, why don't we just leave the statement as is? Staff seems to already be coming up with, maybe in consultation with the D&I committee with respect to the Texas, and maybe as Councilor Bernardo put it, these kinds of shootings in general, and the condemning of that specific and in general in a separate statement. If that's what we're sort of leaning to already, I don't want to complicate something unnecessarily. So if we want to leave it the way it is and then come up with another one later on, that's totally fine as well.
Or even modify this in whatever way they want to do it. I'm happy.
Or modify.
I'm not going to fight with you, Steve. Let's make it. It's getting to be 10 o'clock and I want to go.
Well, but you're not. Why don't we just go?
Make the call, Councilor Bernardo. You made the motion.
All right, go ahead, Walter. It's on you now.
It's on me.
We're in your hands.
Denise has got her hand up. She'll solve both of us.
So one opportunity, if you would like to direct staff, is we are aware that the County of Dufferin has issued a very wide-reaching statement on the horrors of gun violence as it affects multiple communities, and it would address Texas as well. If you're comfortable with that, without me having it at my fingertips, but I can find it, we can actually restate that as also supported by the Town of Shelburne's Council and issue that tomorrow.
That works for me. Does that work for you, Steve? I think he's gone to bed on me.
I think he's frozen. Okay, well, we'll take that as essence. Okay.
So I just want to clarify, we're going to do that then. We'll use the
I think that's fine.
issuance of the county And we will repost that saying that Dufferin County has issued this and Shelburne Council fully supports this.
Yeah.
That works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor? The original motion. Carried. All right. And the clerk just reminded me that we need a motion to sit past 10 o'clock. Promise we won't be much past 10, but Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Buffett. It's on you two now. All in favor? That's carried. Okay.
You're not getting much past 10. I'll be like Steve Frozen pretty soon.
Well, and unfortunately, the next item is his notice of motion from the last meeting, and we seem to have lost him. Denise?
I thank you through the mayor, through yourself, just to note and recognizing that the notice of motion, I just wanted to clarify that at the DEI, there was already through Every Child Matters initiatives, the consideration or the request to look at a medicine wheel. Staff had provided preliminary information on the cost of Orangeville, which we understood was about 40,000, and that the sub-working groups were part of their mandate. We're going to be looking at what they felt was an appropriate project that would be brought back for future budgets or capital impacts to the town's budget. Additionally, we did at the last DEI meeting provide a brief overview of the crosswalks, and that one of them would be in recognition of Every Child Matters, as well as a number of other initiatives that the high school had suggested. And staff came up with a general outline of what projects or what the project would entail, with the vision that it might be up to 10 to 20 crosswalks. At that meeting, Councillor Fegan wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to be $10,000 to $15,000 a crosswalk, because Orangevilles were 12, we understood, and we had indicated that ours were in the range of 1,800 to 2,000 based on our estimates, and it might be a 4-year project. So that's sort of where we left it at the last DEI meeting. And I just wanted to provide that input because we have to get the meeting minutes to the clerk so that they can put on the next agenda as a communication. And then obviously all of that background will be there.
So it sort of sounds as though some of this has gone ahead anyways, and that's fine. So I guess this is more of a formality at this point, just to sort of.
Yeah, and I can see Deputy Mayor Anderson is back, so.
Back on dial up, I think.
20%, so time is limited. Just one question on the flag. Will that come out of the D&I committee budget, or would that be just purchased outside of that budget is my question. And by way of sourcing it, I spoke to Debbie Egerton on the weekend, and she confirmed that there's only apparently one source that you could go through to get it. So I guess we'll have to do that in consultation once we decide if we decide to purchase it. But again, I'm wondering whether that's coming out of the committee budget or is that coming out of another budget?
So I'll answer it. So the committee's budget is 15,000. I know they have not spent much of it to date. They've probably spent about 4. That certainly, if that's something that they wish to include within the subcommittee working group review for projects to support Every Child Matters or Indigenous commitments, that's certainly something that they can unilaterally make that decision as part of their budget and incorporate that into whatever ceremonies, celebrations, or projects they would like to undertake as a committee, and then make sure that that flag is raised every year during the designated time.
Okay, all right, thank you. My understanding, and just for the rest of the committee, I was advised that that flag is about $300. I don't know if that was made part of Debbie's presentation to council, but so it's not a huge cost, but I was just wondering anyways, but thank you.
Okay. Carrie, did you want to add something there? Or? Okay. All right, so the motion is on the floor. It was moved obviously at the last meeting by Deputy Mayor Anderson. Do I have a seconder for that?
I think I seconded it at the last meeting.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Carried. Any notices of motion for this evening? No. Okay. Communications. Relatively short list tonight. Oh, okay. Can I have a motion then to receive the items listed under communications for information? Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Buffett. All in favor? Carried. And a motion for the confirming bylaw. Counselor Bernardo, seconded by Counselor Hall. All in favor? And motion to adjourn. I'll switch it up this time. Counselor Hall, second by Counselor Bernardo. All in favor?